Hey guys, our friend Marshall Kosloff, he's going to be conducting interviews with experts and newsmakers for us here on the Breaking Points channel. We're really excited.
Yep, here it is.
Kyla Scanlon, welcome to Breaking Points.
Hey, Marshall, how's it going?
Great to talk with you. So, as you know, and as you cover on Substack, YouTube, TikTok, all the various platforms you're on, there's always different stories going on right now. And I wanted to speak with you because you are an excellent synthesizer. You are taking all of these stories, putting them together, providing something comprehensive that people could really think about. So I wanted to just take this Wednesday to go over and talk through some of these big top line stories to guide viewers. So let's just start. We were talking right before this recording, and you were saying you were really concerned about commodities. That's something we should really focus on. So let's just start there.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you've just seen a huge run up in commodities since the invasion and really over the past year because of the pandemic across everything, right? So wheat, corn, soybeans, and then an input into all these commodities is fertilizer. And you've seen fertilizer have a huge run up in price, mostly because Russia and Belarus are both massive producers of fertilizer. And also an input into fertilizer is natural gas. And so we have a whole energy crisis that we're grappling with. So it's almost everywhere you turn, one of the inputs to the processes that we have become so reliant on is sort of crumbling away. Yeah.
And you've just said Ukraine, Russia, but then also the broader pandemic. How much of the surge in commodity prices has been driven by what's happened in the past month, and how much of it was a long-term trend that we should be worrying about?
Yeah, I mean, wheat is up like 20%, I think, since invasion day. So, and I think it's up like 69% over the past year. So a large portion of it is because of the invasion. And I think that most of it is worrying because of the invasion, because of the war, right? So planting season is getting disrupted, flows are getting disrupted. So being able to get fertilizer onto the actual crops themselves is disrupted. Being able to go and farm the crops is disrupted. So it's all of those things that we need to worry about. Yeah.
And how is this going to be felt in our lives over the coming months and even the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of us are already feeling it, whether that be through a higher grocery bill or through prices at the pump. The Federal Reserve decided to raise interest rates to help combat or attempt to combat some of this inflation. So hopefully we'll see some of it stem soon, but it'll depend on how quickly these supply chains can recover. It'll depend on what the end of this war does look like, and it'll depend on how companies choose to manage how they mitigate the costs. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up supply chains. It seems like for the past COVID period, there's been all these different supply chain incidents. And now this is just the latest one. What's the current state of the supply chain discourse post-invasion? We've seen the narrative shift at different times. We're past Christmas. Where do things stand now?
Yeah, it's still up in the air. It's difficult to get ships around a little bit, but I mean, everything is still running like it's supposed to, but because gasoline prices are so high, that puts pressure on trucks, that puts pressure on planes. And so those are core components of the supply chain, and that makes that whole process more expensive. So we don't really have the same bottlenecks at the ports that we used to. It's still not great, but it's not like, oh, everything's building up because of XYZ. It's more like everything is just becoming, a little bit more expensive.
And let's talk about gasoline. You just had a YouTube video and Substack out around this. How much of the current increase in gas prices is due to those geopolitical tensions, and how much is actually under control when it comes to the US specifically?
Yeah, so gasoline is super interesting, right? So like it responds to the price of oil, but WTI crude oil is not necessarily gasoline. Like gasoline is a refinery process from crude oil itself. So it responds to, and crude oil has bounced between $100 a barrel to essentially like over $130 a barrel, which is huge moves. And the variability in oil prices like that freak out the people who like the different gasoline stations, because they're like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to manage? And gas itself is pretty low margin for gas stations. They make most of their money through selling snacks or whatever. But a lot of people, gas prices are sticky. So if oil prices go up, gas prices go up, we're not going to see gas prices fall as much. So if you think about the invasion, like a large function of the price of oil fluctuating so much is because the United States has sanctioned Russian oil there's talks that Europe could potentially sanction Russian oil as well. And then in the US, we're trying to ramp up shale production. We're trying to get more oil up. And there is a little bit of movement, but it's not like in terms of actual movement versus what is actually being produced, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So we're trying to find different solutions, whether that be from Saudi Arabia or having OPEC in general produce a little bit more. So yeah, that's kind of up in the air too. Yeah.
And as we're thinking about this broader geopolitical picture, you did some writing around where things stood at the start of the invasion. It's been a few weeks, obviously. As you're looking at the analysis of these various issues, whether it's the commodities or the broader sanctions, how much confidence do folks have that this is basically going to be the status quo for a long time moving forward?
Oh, in terms of like how the sanctions are playing out on the prices of everything?
Yeah, just how the sanctions in the current conflict, as in basically the way to sum it up is this the type of situation across these boards we're discussing where things could just get better next month, let's say if a peace deal happens, or are these longer term baked in problems now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll depend on what the end of the war looks like, right? So like if I'm not sure if Russia like just backs off, like, and then things can kind of go back to normal a little bit faster, potentially, like sanctions get lifted, everybody goes back to normal somehow. It'll just depend on what that actual endpoint looks like. I think most people are expecting a little bit of pain for longer because it's not like you can just invade your neighbor and not have consequences happen because of that. Like the plan with the economic sanctions that the United States and the West have implemented on Russia alongside other countries is to decimate Russia's economy. And so in terms of them being a part of this sort of like how we think about pricing models, how we think about a globalized economy, like they're just not going to be the same core component that we're used to. And like the economy is essentially a giant Jenga tower, right? So if you remove one of those Jenga pieces, like we're sort of doing with Russia, the whole thing becomes that much more unstable. So I think that's how most people are thinking about it. It's just like, who knows?
And this is the question I really wanted to ask you, and no one really knows, so I completely understand if you don't have the perfect answer, but how does crypto fit into all of this? It seems like when it came to the sanctions, critiques that this could lead to evasion, how is the crypto picture playing out so far?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of interesting things with crypto. So Russia, the government itself, can't use crypto to evade sanctions. There's no evidence of that happening. It's not something that we see, like it's a public ledger. So you would see if all of a sudden a country started moving billions of dollars or tried to do like sneaky things. You do see the Russian people and Ukrainians buying crypto. So you do see upticks in flows there, which I think is good. They're able to get away, like the ruble has completely lost all value, which is Russia's currency. So that's been really valuable for the Russian and Ukrainian people who are trying to find stable currency to put their money in, their hard-earned money. And then crypto has been a really strong donation tool. So I think last time I checked, it was over 100 million US dollars have been donated in terms of crypto to Ukraine, which is really valuable. So I think there's a lot of, the president of the ECB came out today and said that Russia was using crypto to evade sanctions. And I think that's just more about trying to grapple with regulation around crypto. So it's the narrative doesn't match the flows though, Yeah.
And to sum this all up, we've hit a bunch of different topics, everything from crypto, energy, agriculture, geopolitics. How would you, just as an analyst of this space, sum up the broader story or just the moment that everyone seems to be working their way through right now?
Yeah, I would just say like uncertainty is probably the biggest word. Uncertainty in uncommon circumstances. So nobody really knows what's going to happen. We have a general idea of how we can start moving in the right direction to sort of protect, agriculture, but you have in a globalized world, you just have all of these delicate little balances that are happening all the time. And I think that we've gotten really used to this perfect world almost, right, of a globalized economy where we can rely on other countries, but that's become increasingly not it. So yeah, uncertainty in uncommon circumstances.
Kyla, this has been really great. I'd love for you to just go down the ledger and just shout out everywhere folks should take a look at your work.
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter at Kyla Scan, on Instagram at Kyla Scan. I have a YouTube channel, Kyla Scanlon, Substack, kyla.substack.com. Everything is self-named, not because I intended to, it just was easiest that way. And then, so YouTube podcast is called Let's Appreciate. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And yeah, I'm across the board. Just Google me, Kyla Scanlon, and I come up. So yeah.
Great. Kyla, thank you so much for joining us on Breaking Points.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem, which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys and we appreciate you so much.